The Tasmanian Community Fund presents the Breaking Barriers, Building Futures podcast, hosted by Alex McKenzie in conversation with Dudley Billing. A warning for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that this conversation mentions an Aboriginal person who has died.
Dudley,
Alex,
welcome. Episode 1 of Breaking Barriers, Building Futures for the Tas Community Fund.
we can do this together.
I think we can.
Yeah.
I think this is a red hot start
Yeah,
for this series.
I hope so.
The intention being to try and understand a little bit about you and your Tasmanian community leadership journey,
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
vast as it is. I think important to introduce ourselves properly. So my name's obviously Alex McKenzie. I'm the North West Coast board member of the Tas Community Fund board. My people, generally speaking, are Anglo-Celts coming out of, call it rural England and northwestern Scotland. And we're here at the moment on the land of the Tomagina people, as I understand it.
Yep.
Just to the east of Pinmatic, or
Yep.
Rocky Cape, as it's known to most. And as is appropriate, acknowledge that this Palawapakana land always was and always will be.
Absolutely.
And pay my respects to the traditional custodians. Talk to me a little bit about your place here, Dudley, where, as I said, just to the east of Pinmatic. This is home for you.
It certainly is.
Has it always been home?
I grew up in Smithton, and I had an auntie who was a nurse in Wynyard who used to make this very regular trips down to here. My mum's family are from Scotland and then on to London and to here. And my auntie Barb found
Was it the traditional Tasmanian path on a fleet? Forced migration?
Yeah, 10-pound poms.
10-pound poms,
Yeah,
right.
so I think my granddad pulled a lot of bodies out of stadiums and buildings and stuff. He was a firefighter during the war.
Okay.
Yeah, and then and sort of half the family were born during wartime, and then my mum came a bit later, and they all came over here, I think when she was about 4 years old, and made a new start of it via Camp Clayton, and all that sort of stuff. So
I love it.
yeah, and I think Granddad taught himself Hebrew towards the end of his life. He
Wow.
became a bit sort of what do you call it? Disenchanted with his version of the Bible he'd been kind of taken on, which was it's interesting. He's a thinking man, if nothing else.
Philosophical in his later years.
Absolutely,
perhaps.
yeah. So that was pretty interesting. Yeah, but Auntie Barb, the oldest of the clan, she loved Sisters Beach, and I came down here a bit as a youngster and hung out in the shack very next door to you here. And we'd go to Birdland, which is just
magic.
Oh, absolute magic. These trails that would go down, along the riparian zone of these creeks here and up through, with the penultimate point being a very small chapel on the top of the hill here at a fire trail, which is now in private land, but then for some reason seemed open slather to get to. And
that chapel's still there, isn't it?
my wife and I got married there.
Did you?
Yeah. Had 12 of us, I think, 12 or 14 of us crammed in that little chapel.
I don't know if you went to it, but Acoustic Life of Sheds with 10 Days on the Island a couple of years ago had a recording.
I heard.
It's extraordinary.
I'll bet.
Yeah, extraordinary use of weather and the sound of rain on that roof and that kind of quintessential corrugated sound of water and cosy yet wild and
Perfect.
Yeah,
because it was a really wild night, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah.
No, I knew that concert was on, and I was busy doing something else. And we'd I think, I don't know if it was that year or a couple of years before, I'd worked on Acoustic Life of Sheds with Lucky Oceans and a trumpet player named Phil Slater, and we did this thing up on the hill at Millabina where we made these aeolian harps that the sou'westerly played. I made them out of downpipe with fishing line, and the wind would play them and we just tuned them to sort of the stars.
And that's what Aeolian means. The
Aeolian,
wind.
exactly. The wind, yeah.
The wind.
Yeah. So the wind was playing these harps. We put pickups on the bottom of steel droppers that they were attached to, then fed them back into the shed, and had speaker exciters on the shed. Jim Atkins was controlling sound and was making the shed the speaker.
Wow.
And affecting the sound that was coming through these things. And then Genevieve, Lacey and Phil and another guy on harp would just jam to what was coming through the shed.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah. I sat back in a hay bale and watched that after we'd done all the work, and it was incredible stuff.
That's a lovely segue to what I understand to be an organisation that helped kickstart your community leadership journey that I mentioned at the start. Can you talk to me a little bit about what led you to work with Big Heart?
Well, Big Heart kind of leads you to work with them, and then it's a really interesting process the way they go about it. And they kind of, in a strange way, still on some level covert within the Northwest Coast because they go out and do things elsewhere and always have a presence here.
They do,
but not everyone else always knows that or picks up on that. And I think in some way that's the way they like to operate, because it's not you don't feel like you're being absorbed into something with this huge presence until you realise that you're in some deep end situations and you're doing some really amazing work. And that place, So I sort of, growing up in Smithton, always had a sense of community and clubs, and I helped fundraise for our first skate park, and I did those sort of things and was kind of involved with the youth council and that sort of stuff. But I never, that was more born out of something to do. And I never thought about how to actually kind of use that model to actually think about some larger scale issues or problems and turn the work into broader scale kind of magic like Big Art. So Scott really made me question a lot of things about myself and my own process and what I wanted out of professional life. Which was it was a big epiphany to go and work for them.
And when you say that, what you wanted out of professional life, to me, the word that I'm sort of rolling around in my head is impact.
Yeah.
I see this common thread in the various roles that I understand that you've had to have been really impact focused. Mind touching on the work you did in Roebourne? There'd be some people that don't know about that project that you were involved in.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know if anyone's caught any of the stuff Big Art have done in the last few years with Songs of Freedom, Songs of Peace and Songs of Freedom. They've had a freedom concert that's been touring nationally for the last couple of years, and they did one in Hobart recently, and a lot of focus around Indigenous incarceration rates and that kind of thing. And I had just fallen into doing some big artwork through someone had asked me to do some soundtrack work on a film that was happening here about autocide and about young people dying in car wrecks here. And
it was called Drive, wasn't it?
That was called Drive, yeah. And that was a really hard-hitting kind of doco.
It was. I remember seeing it at school.
Yeah. And I did that, and then all of a sudden someone's asked me to come to the Pilbara and co-write and do things musically in the prison there, in Roebourne Regional Prison. And I had no idea of really what the size of the project or the broader scope, but probably my only real job description was to go there and shut up and like just absorb things, which was really refreshing for me because I hadn't done much of that in my probably 25 or 26 years. No, probably 27 years. I was probably 27 when I went there. Yeah. Hadn't really thought to sit back and listen and observe, culture going on around you. So I went there and did exactly what I was told, and then just slowly got braver and braver and started to engage people in the prison and in the community in musical kind of ventures and artistic ventures, recording sound and working on a comic book with Stu, doing a bit of sound for him where we could, doing some film components to his sound stuff. And then we made, I think we made 3 or 4 independent releases, and then we worked with Inertia Records to make a large-scale release called Muru. Muru Muru means back, but it's actually from the name Muruwaru, which is featherback, which was the name of the late John Pat. And his death, he was killed in custody, and that was the death that sparked the inquest into
deaths in custody.
Into deaths in custody. So, and we were at that time at the 30-year mark of that happening. And we put a lot of effort into the fact that a lot of those recommendations hadn't been implemented, and not much more than lip service had been paid to that. And we played on the steps of Parliament House in Perth when Mavis, his mother, the late Mavis Pat, was rewarded an official apology from the West Australian government and compensated. And we worked a lot with that, with the Pat family, and and it was just and people would get out of prison and join our touring lineup.
Wow!
And we'd work with the parole board, and and a lot of sort of more experienced artists and people joining the lineup and co-writing with us, and making that band happen. And that work continues on now with the Freedom concert and with the Freedom Band. So yeah,
and in terms of that listening, listening to community and understanding that the voice of people that are experiencing whatever it may be is necessary to inform the solutions that might affect them.
Yeah.
You seem to me to have brought that approach to your work in coming home to the coast and to Circular Head in particular. Do you reflect on how important it is to have local voices feeding into solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the one thing, this is probably my first time where, I did 10 years in horticulture, I guess. And by the end of that 10 years, I kind of started to feel like I had a grip on certain aspects of that profession. I'm at about the 10-year mark now, where I can reflect on what I've been doing and start to feel like I've got some kind of grip on what it takes for some of that work to be successful.
Which, speaking broadly, as I understand it, is in sort of barriers to education.
Yeah, youth and community work, and I would say barriers to education for sure, where people don't feel like they fit the mould, and so. Yeah, I definitely feel like. Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
It's just listening to local voices.
Yeah, really okay. So there's the one thing that I keep coming back to when I'm doing youth work that I find never fails me is just a slow and quiet consistency. So you don't have to bestow your own experiences of life upon a young person or someone that's troubled. You don't have to wax lyrical about the meaning of life. You don't have to, do anything really out of the ordinary. All you have to do is be present and be there when, and be dependable. And through doing that over a period of time, people will start to open up or trust you on an idea or turn up more often or do a lot of that stuff. And if and the only way to achieve that is to, on some level, be local, be there, be constantly, because there will always be an influx and an outflux of people, coming and going and wanting things and asking things and doing that sort of stuff. And if things being really, what's the word? If you've got a young person who inconsistency is the one consistent theme of their lives, then the minute something is around that they can depend on or that they know is going to be there, they will on some level at some stage begin to gravitate towards it. And that's when you can start to get some work done. So the only way to really achieve that is to be talking with local people and for local people to have some say and some steering in how things work.
What's your sense of time for those sort of relationships?
On a scale,
Yeah.
it can vary so much. It really can. Yeah. And you can see things on some people. It's every individual's different. Every organisation's different. And it can be as small as 6 months, but it can be 4 or 5 years as well. But also, like, I think it doesn't. We live in a sort of a society and a world and a professional environment now where people are so quick to pick up and run if things aren't right. And I think you do yourself a big injustice sometimes by not staying the course with things and working through stuff on some level to see things through and to actually get to the crux of situations. And so I feel like resilience and consistency can really win over in the long run.
I know from a TCF perspective that 6 years ago when I started on the board and we're looking at strategic decisions to fund, routinely seeing applications for 12 months to 2 years, maxing out at that sort of 3-year mark.
Yeah.
We know nationally that, the leading philanthropics are talking about decade funding now, in order to really shift that dial. And you're talking about ins and outs and consistency. Number of years ago now, the board met down at New Bena on the peninsula, and we had a presentation from an extraordinary neighbourhood house manager down there. Does some extraordinary work with a pretty disparate community. And she was talking to us about the fatigue that community had felt since 1996.
Since the fires.
Well, since the fires, yes, but also then since 1996. This significant trauma in that place following Port Arthur.
Of course.
Of solutions coming to them, but as you say, it being tricky and it being hard, there being a lot of pain in the place, and then those programs or projects, because they were short-term focused, not getting the runs on the board and then leaving, and what that actually ends up doing is building on the feeling of disempowerment and not being understood from the community that is receiving the assistance. And I don't make any comment that the organisations turning up with that shorter term focus are doing anything other than what the system at the stage was requiring of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in terms of capacity for impact, that longer term view, from what I'm hearing, is a way to really reach in and see some things change.
It feels to me as though from a story like that, they'd be at a very different place, in ironically a shorter time frame.
Yeah.
Had they've gone, had they have had access to something that was more, because things can bend and flex and respond to feedback as well at the same time. But there still has to be the same core unit of people and ideas in place in order to sort of work with that. Yeah.
In terms of core people, you're a person that gives a lot, and you like to be involved.
Yeah.
What would your reflections be on how you take care of yourself while you're doing that work?
Alex, a huge part of that for me was the epiphany about 15 years ago to buy a house in Sisters Beach. Because when you're from provincial little Tassie, that curly little drive from the highway to Sisters Beach is like miles as far as most people are concerned. And for a long time, we didn't even have any phone signal, and it was like you could drive into a little
bliss.
It was like it's a haven. So
it is a haven. By
having geographical proximity, but then also this strange kind of provincial distance where you can get back to somewhere where there's only 300 people in the approximate area, and I can take my kids for a walk down the street and not get hit up to play my guitar at the next fundraiser, and all that
genuinely.
sort of it's not that I don't enjoy doing that stuff. I give as much as I can, but
you do.
I'm genuinely considering going back to a dumb phone because I've heard that is a thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I again with that 10-year of professional kind of experience on something now, what I'm starting to understand about my personality type is that I can juggle about 3 to 4 kind of professional balls in the air at once, very confidently. But the minute it goes to 5 or 6, things will slip out.
Yeah.
And so I'm as present as I can be for the tasks that are right in front of me and at hand.
Yeah.
And I know that, and I know I'll do my absolute best job at that. So it's a good way of whittling down things to their most important and going, right, well, here are the things that are expected of me at work. These are the things I need to do to the best of my ability. These other things I can sort of, if I'm honest with people, I can say, I may be able to help out with that, or I may not be able to. But, I've got these 4 key things, and family is, number one.
Yeah.
And then everything else after that, So, yeah. So
as you say that, I feel the laser beam eyes of my loved ones looking down from wherever they might be. That similar thing of there is a point where you get to learn your capacity, and important to be able to manage that as best you can.
Well, I think on some level the event of a young one in your life or whatever helps you strip back things to its absolute core.
Cataclysmic event upon your previous life.
Big time. And so when you finally rebuild yourself and your confidence and your capacity, you start to be able to kind of just focus a little better.
Yeah,
I find. Yeah, and I know you're in the throes of it at the moment. It's a little like I'm by no means out of the woodwork, but I've got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. So they're going to school and they're doing a lot of things, and I'm starting to sort of be able to think, right, well, what are my steps professionally now? And what am I going to do? And how can I best serve the community with what I'm doing?
Yeah, I think for me, the past 2 years, it's my sense of time has really shifted. Yeah. Not just in terms of how precious it is, and parts of a day that I didn't necessarily place value in before, I now place really significant value in. For me, I work a pretty standard sort of day. Yeah. But the hours between, 7:15 and 8:30, and then, 5:30 through to 7:30 p.m. are kind of sacred in a way they were not before.
Absolutely.
And I think in terms of the things that you say yes to, fundamentally shifts as life changes.
That in turn will help you in the long run too. It gives you more longevity.
Yeah, I hope so. And I also think that part of the narrative I've been telling myself is that that sense of balance and a capacity to give to the community, but also be available at home is part of why I choose to live here. Yeah, yeah. You make active decisions about that. Yeah. And I remember in my first year of legal practice, it was not an easy year, and there were friends that were not finding it easy to find work, and I was sort of telling them, you got to go to the coast. Yeah. The work's the same, but the life's more balanced. Go to the coast.
Decentralise Australia.
Go to the coast.
Yes, yes.
And, I got to this point, I remember it really clearly. I'd been getting some professional help as I needed to, and went to Melbourne for the quintessential footy birthday weekend. I was watching my beloved Bulldogs beat the Bombers.
Oh, well done.
Yeah. And I wasn't enjoying it.
Oh.
And
yeah.
I was like, if I can't enjoy this, something's got to shift.
Yep.
And so I came home, did some other things for a bit, and the past decade back here has been magic.
Yes.
For all of those reasons.
Yeah.
If I were to say to you, Dudley, I've got $1 million and 10 years.
Yeah.
Where do you fund? And what do you do? How are you shifting the dial?
Well, that slow and steady and consistent kind of thing, and something that's really aware of. I've got 2 ideas. Can I give you 2?
Give me 2.
All right. So a project I'm about to set off on, and something I'm about to really absorb myself in as of January next year will be the Artisan Project out of Wynyard, out of Calder Road with Big Art. And Scott's always had a lot of work that's revolved around high-end theatre work or high-end sort of performances of some kind of.
Yeah.
And as he is starting to get on in age, he's starting to realise that, on some level, this company's got to not just rely on this playwright to write.
It's going to have to be on a different axis.
It's going to have to be on a different axis. And he's setting things up in a really interesting way at the moment. Well, I shouldn't say just he, because it's a huge team.
It is a big team.
And there are some great workers amongst there, Ange Pryor and locals like Joby Starrick, and people are doing such great work there. And, what I know of it at the moment is the idea is to get artisanal tradespeople, a stonemason, a really great chef, an amazing builder, paper maker. There are some really great tradespeople there to sort of base themselves out of the Wynyard area and be totally open to the Big Art model. They are working as sole trading business people. With a leg up from Big Art and with access to a place to base themselves and store their equipment and ply their trade. But all of these businesses are well and truly across the Big Art model of that young person there or that guy there who's just had a bit of a time of it, or this young lady here is just really seeking an opportunity of some description. And you can get alongside people that are super passionate about what they do and soak a bit of that up. And if it happens to be something that aligns with a trade or something you're vaguely interested in, great, even better. And you work in achievable increments. So it could be a work placement that's 2 days a week. It could be you could wind up a subcontractor under your own ABN. You could there are 1,000 different ways to skin that cat. And you can come and join in and be a part of what that is and the work that goes on around that community. And especially with where we're at educationally and with where this region has always been professionally, trades-based stuff is a really good place to start, because we can't kid ourselves that we're anywhere near the national average for uni enrolments or anything like that. And we can't even kid ourselves that that there are a lot of jobs around there are some, but there's not a whole bunch of jobs around for university qualified people.
No.
You've got to come and assume management roles and really sink your teeth into the thing here to get a role. We've always been naturally kind of based around primary resource and trade and stuff like that. And so people, it's we're lucky in Circular Head, for instance. There are jobs for most people that come out of school, provided they're willing to take on, something in the primary industry sector or an apprenticeship of sorts or something like that. And so this is a way of making that accessible to the people who, for whatever reason, may have felt that was just that tiny bit out of reach. So that's I'm going to be spending a lot of time in that world in the next few years, and I'm looking really forward to that. So that's one really long-term that's not going anywhere. I think that's on at the moment, like a 7-year kind of trial period.
Fabulous.
There's talk I shouldn't be, I'm sure there's people at Big Art that can speak way more about this because I'm not yet back working with those guys, but there's talk down the track of taking the model elsewhere once we've refined it and looked at it. So, other regional places around Australia. So, so that's really exciting. And then I've got this other idea that I've been writing for the last sort of the last probably 3 months, 2 or 3 months, in response to my time with the education department and my experience of what they're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and what those organisations and what those what those schools are having to sort of look at and how education's needing to look now for people specifically. The thing that interests me the most at the moment is people straddling the ages of 18, like from 15, 16, 17 and 18, particularly when you've got people that are struggling in any way. When they get to 18, it can be just bang, that's it. Our attempts to now engage this person are no longer relevant. We don't have to do that. They're not on our legal kind of books.
Yeah.
So let's cut that off. So anywhere,
it's a real cliff face.
It's a cliff face. It's a total cliff face for someone.
For all sorts of supports, educational, health, justice. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. There's just this huge big thing, and it's like, oh, well, they're 18 now. They're adults. They were on their own.
Yeah.
Regardless of what challenges they've faced up to then. And I keep coming back to this idea that I'm putting form around at the moment of term-long camps that are based around vocational educational and training sort of qualifications. And in my head, and it could look a whole lot different by the time I see this to fruit, if I ever get there, and I'm hoping to. But in my head, you apply for a spot at the camp. Maybe the first camp has 20 to 30. I don't know yet. You apply for a spot at the camp. There are 4 disciplines you can do: conservation, ecosystem management, construction, community services, and hospitality and catering. You get bussed up of a Monday morning to the camp place, which could look like, like a Camp Clayton or a Wild or
Riverbend or whatever it may be.
Somewhere like that.
Yep.
You spend your first week or 2 weeks all doing senior first aid, all doing team building exercises, hearing from
classic kind of tickets to play stuff.
All that sort of stuff, tickets to play. And then you start to turn your attention to a project in a small town somewhere close by. It could be like revamping an old park space or something like that. This is just a loose idea at the moment. You've got your conservation ecosystem management team sort of doing all the softscape and the design and all that sort of stuff. You've got your construction guys doing an undercover area and a barbecue. You've got the community services people doing a lot of the logistics and the social media side and liaising with media and handling the way that the whole thing kind of pans out. You've got hospitality and catering, making sure everyone's fed and catered for. And you come back of an evening and you take a movie in and you have access to the same counsellors and same social workers that you've got for the rest of your school year and all that. They can come up and visit anytime that it's possible to schedule. And you undergo this for an entire term, and in your last week of term, it focuses more on, during that time you'd also, for at least probably 2 days a week, be doing the theory side, right? Because you want to try and finish this Cert 1 or 2 within a term long. Then in the last week, it starts to pivot towards career opportunities and focuses, and you've got employment agencies coming in, you've got the ADF coming in, you've got a lot of people coming in to sort of meet with each person and get an idea about what their strengths are, what they've got out of the camp, what they've got out of that time, what they'd like to see themselves do in the future. And they leave at the end of term with a certificate ready to go back into school or onwards to work at a time. And this would be specifically for people who at the time aren't studying pre-tertiaries or at the time are struggling with attendance and things like, that sort of thing. So that's a loose kind of...
For whom formally finishing school might not be a certainty.
Absolutely. I know it wasn't for me, and I know it's not for a lot of the kids that I work with and a lot of my friends. So it's with those people in mind, because I was lucky to get thrown a line and get thrown a few opportunities at really crucial times in my life, just because I'm a gregarious little so-and-so. But there are other people out there who probably aren't quite, so forthcoming. And just for that reason alone, they're missing out on a lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, my reflection on that, mate, is that sounds like an extraordinary piece of work. And I agree. There is something about having a personality, whether it be nature or nurture, that willingness and a safety within yourself to ask.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be actually asking or just being around things so that opportunities become available to you. If you've not seen how that's done, or you've not been around people that recognise the value of your contribution, those things don't happen.
No, there's no handbook to that.
No,
it can be just the tiniest little things. And if you create some sort of a space where there's way more opportunity that these things, these little moments are going to happen for people, then you increase the likelihood that the community is going to thrive. You know, that's the way I look at it for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
No worries.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Good fun.
Great fun.
You've been listening to the Breaking Barriers Building Futures podcast, presented by the Tasmanian Community Fund. The fund seeks to increase community well-being by removing barriers to learning and help Tasmanians to develop, deliver and lead responses to their needs. For more information, go to tascomfund.org.